righty, we are back in business. I'm Dave Rubin. This is the Rubin Report on December 2nd, 2024. I hope you all took some time off the politics, off the culture wars, off the endless fighting and the craziness, and sat with your family, because you know that's always perfect. I hope everybody ate a lot of food and your pants were unbuckled and you drank and did whatever it is that you do to bring you a little joy and a little thankfulness. I'm very appreciative. Had a lot of family around. We ate like crazy. I am really, I just said to my guys before we started, I am making it my personal commitment, because this is the time of year, basically starting at Thanksgiving through New Year's, that something like, someone can do the Google on this, people gain like 30% of their weight basically in this month, because there's just so many holiday parties and family and food and pie and ice cream and cakes and all of this stuff. So I am redoubling the efforts here to not end the year as a giant potato. That is, I will not end this year as Brian Stelter. We're gonna end it sharp, and we got a lot to get to, guys, because there's a lot of craziness. This is actually, this show feels very complete to me in terms of everything that's been going on in the world. Of course, the big news broke last night on Sunday night. You don't say on a Sunday night that Joe Biden, the elderly man pretending to be president, he pardoned his crackhead son, Hunter Biden. We'll get to that. Then there were a bunch of other big things that broke over the weekend, including Kash Patel as head of the FBI, the media reaction to all of this. My friend Jay Bhattacharya is now going to head up NIH, which just could not be a better selection at all. And really what we're going to focus on is the residual effects of the election that was just a month ago tomorrow, believe it or not. That already the world is being reordered. We're seeing international agreements be reordered. We're seeing some people come crawling back to Trump. Like, there's a lot of good signs out there. Doesn't mean that there aren't some bad things that happen. And I guess we're going to start with one of those. So the big news last night was that Joe Biden has pardoned Hunter Biden. Here from NBC News, President Biden set to issue a pardon of his son Hunter Biden. The president is expected to announce his decision Sunday night, according to a senior White House official. And I'm not going to read the entire statement for you, but of course there it is. Obviously, Joe Biden did not write it. Presidents don't write these things. And the whole thing is, I would say, largely farcical, because Joe Biden repeatedly, and we'll get to some video evidence of it momentarily, repeatedly said that he would not pardon Hunter Biden, that there would be no need to do it, et cetera, et cetera. Are we going to go to the Mario thing, or we're going to skip ahead here? Yeah. So here is some video evidence of that. We're just getting back into the groove. We've all got a lot of gravy in us. Here is some video evidence of Joe Biden saying that he will not pardon Hunter.
I'm extremely proud of my son, Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. He's one of the brightest, most decent men I know. And I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision, and I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
As we sit here in Normandy, your son Hunter is on trial, and I know that you cannot speak about an ongoing federal prosecution. But let me ask you, will you accept the jury's outcome, their verdict, no matter what it is?
Yes.
And have you ruled out a pardon for your son?
Yes.
You have.
I guess the most generous version is that he just doesn't ever know what he's saying. So maybe he didn't even know that he was actually saying that he was going to pardon his son. Look, we're going to get to some of the hypocrisy in just a moment. And I see a lot of people saying, oh, well, what wouldn't you do if it was your son? And I can only imagine if my son was in some kind of trouble, say smoking crack and banging hookers and working for Ukrainian energy companies and laundering money and all of those things, and then I had the power to pardon him, that would be something that I'd have to deal with. Justin has not done any of those things yet, fortunately, at 2 years old, although we were finger painting this weekend and he got it all over the outdoor couch, and I'm not happy about that, and we'll have to deal with that. But the point is, there's a hypocrisy level here, but I think bigger than the hypocrisy level is that people seem to be surprised. A lot of people are like, oh my God, Joe Biden lied, because there's a million videos like we just showed you. He lied. But everything Joe Biden has done for the past 4 years has been a lie. So let's throw up a tweet from old Joe. This is just spectacular. So this is from May 31st, 2024, Joe Biden tweeted out, "No one is above the law." And that was obviously in reference to Hunter Biden, because at that time, a couple months back, 6 months ago, people were saying, oh my God, is he gonna pardon Hunter? Well, now look at the community notes. So as you know, community notes, this is one of the many, many brilliant things that Elon has done on X/Twitter, which is that there is now a fact-checking apparatus that is crowdsourced. So community notes under the tweet of the President of the United States, or at least the man pretending to be president, wrote, "By pardoning his son Hunter, not merely for a single crime, but for all actual or potential crimes he may or may not have created over an 11-year period, Joe Biden has made clear that some people are in fact above the law." And then the beauty of community notes is you can see they reference articles that you can then click into and see, and you can, is this proposed note helpful? And you can rate it, et cetera, et cetera. This is sort of the fact-checking apparatus we've wanted for a long time. So he's not just pardoning him for the stuff he's done, but it's also for potentially stuff he's done that we do not know. Elon Musk wrote that community notes slays in response to that. But I want to get to the lying part, because I am not surprised, obviously. I jokingly, although I deadpanned it on Twitter last night, I wrote, "I'm shocked and appalled about this." And people were like, "What do you mean you're shocked? How can you be appalled? It's obvious." And it's like, guys, little sarcasm every now and again. But there's the getting away with it part, and then there's the lying part, right? And I want to focus on the lying part for a moment, because we are getting out, hopefully, with the Trump election now, the Trump re-election, we are getting out of endless lies. But you don't just get out of lies overnight. There is an entire machine that has been lying to us about everything forever, and you know the laundry list of lies, so we don't have to get into all of that. But I thought, because all these people think, I think even people, let's say on our side, are like, Joe Biden lied, and I can't take the lying. I thought we could just jump back for a moment, because Joe Biden, from the day he announced he was running for president back in 2020, has been lying about, and I mean this literally everything. Here is his campaign launch video. It's just a little smidgen, and see if you at home can catch the lie.
He said there were, quote, "some very fine people on both sides." Very fine people on both sides? We can't forget what happened in Charlottesville. Even more important, we have to remember who we are. This is America.
So Joe Biden literally launched his campaign on a lie, and then the media, which knew it was a lie for 4 years, ran cover for it. As you know, Barack Obama, 2 days before the election, still pushed the very fine people lie. So everything these people do is a lie. So the lie does not surprise me that Joe Biden lied. The hypocrisy also doesn't surprise me. And by the way, as Phoenix just said to me, it's like, what would you do for your son if you had the power? If you had the power to make sure your son doesn't spend the rest of his life in jail, no matter what horrific, disgusting, awful thing he did, would you exercise that power or not? That's I would say, a philosophical and spiritual question we would all have to ask ourselves. And Joe Biden is going out of his way to say, okay, it doesn't matter if I'm just lighting my legacy on fire. He's largely lit it on fire already, but I may as well save my son in the process. We can all judge him differently on that one. But it's not just that Joe Biden has lied about this repeatedly and lied about everything. When you start lying and you have power, there's a lot of people around you, and then they all start lying in service to you. Here's a diversity hire who looks like a Muppet, lying just the way I laid out there, pretty much.
Second one, would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear, and I said no.
Okay, we go back to the first question of the briefing. I know you said not a lot's changed since yesterday and that it's a personal matter, but from a presidential perspective, is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No.
You've also said several times that the president would not pardon or commute the sentence for his son, Hunter. I just want to make sure that that is not going to change over the next 6 months. The president's saying he would not.
It's still a no. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no, and I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
Okay, so the real question, and again here, the argument, what you would do to save your child, to make sure your child did not go to jail, is an open-ended question that we could probably have a great debate about, and maybe we'll continue to do that, right? But the real issue here is not that just Joe Biden launched his campaign on a lie and then lied about literally everything from COVID and everything for the last 4 years, as his mental acuity, all of that. But then he surrounded himself with a bunch of liars. Let's not forget, Karine Jean-Pierre's predecessor was Jen Psaki, and she was an unbelievable, awful liar. And then what happened to her? Well, she left that gig and then became a quote-unquote journalist at the televised mental institution known as MSNBC. So if I was Karine Jean-Pierre, well, now there's so much evidence, we just showed you that, and there's plenty other videos of it, of you lying in service of Joe Biden. So did Joe Biden lie to you, Karine Jean-Pierre? That would be an interesting question. If there was someone that was an actual journalist over at the White House press corps, you might today, when they do their briefing, or tomorrow, you might want to say, Karine, you know, we repeatedly have seen you say that he wasn't going to pardon Hunter. Were you just making that up, or did Joe Biden tell you that? Did the president of the United States lie to your face? Now, it's not a lie for the president to lie to the press secretary, and the press secretary's job is basically to lie, but I think you get the point. Now let's go, because it's not just, of course, you expect Biden to lie, you expect the people in the administration to lie, but now the media. These are not very good people. We have a small compilation here of mainstream media people over the course of the last year or so saying that Joe would never pardon Hunter because Joe's a good man. He respects the justice system. He's not a bad man. He's Joe Biden.
What Trump is saying about the outcome of his trial, what we're hearing from other Republicans who say they don't accept the jury's verdict here in New York.
The contrast is profound. To sit there and say, well, I'm not going to intervene in the legal process, and I wouldn't pardon my son. One side, Democrats and Joe Biden protecting the justice system. And on the other, Republicans and Trump protecting Trump.
Our current president of the United States has so much respect for the law that he has said he would not pardon his son. I mean, you know, again, it's all about the contrast.
President Biden saying, I will respect whatever this jury decides, versus Donald Trump after he was convicted on 34 counts, saying the entire system is rigged against him.
Their latest attack has been that Joe Biden has politicized and weaponized the DOJ, right? That was the whole argument around Donald Trump's conviction. And this week, of course, Hunter Biden was found guilty, and Joe Biden has very clearly said he would not pardon his son, he would not commute his sentence. How stark is this difference? I mean, how can Republicans keep making this argument now that Joe Biden has really put it out there? Where's Hunter? And he stood there in a courtroom, flanked by his family, and he's accepted his sentence.
So Joe Biden's gotten asked about, talking about law and order. He's gotten asked if he would pardon his son. He has said no. On the other side, you've got Donald Trump, who has said that he will pardon the January 6th insurrectionists. Yeah. They're not even his sons. They're just sons of bitches.
He is just vile. I really don't know, no matter how many times we do here are these people, exposing their hypocrisy or their liars, or that they're not even, they purport to be journalists, but a journalist wouldn't just repeat what the person in power is saying. They might explain why a person in power would say something. They might offer some actual analysis, not just regurgitate what the guy is saying, right? But this is what they've all done. They've all become launderers of the lies. That is what they are. They are nothing more than any of it. And of course, why is it that the people who have gotten everything else wrong over the last 4 years also got this wrong? Again, and I don't mean this to pat myself on the back. Why didn't I get this one wrong? Why is it that when Joe Biden 6 months ago was like, I'm not going to pardon Hunter, I didn't get up here and be like, Joe Biden said he's not going to pardon Hunter, and I believe him. Like, am I a wizard? Am I a wizard? Do I have a tall, pointy hat and a long beard? Let's talk about lumen.me, and then we'll get to the FBI pick, and you can already see, right? Like, you guys can see why I love this story. This story has everything. It has all of the liars, all of the politicians, the nonsense, and then it has the media that's run cover for them, and then just the hysteria around everything. So let's do lumen.me, and then we'll talk about Kash Patel. Let me tell you guys about Lumen. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep, and more. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/Rubin to get 15% off your Lumen, or just click the link below. That's lumen.me/Rubin for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. All right, so before we get specifically into Kash Patel as the new FBI director, let's focus for a moment on one more lie that Joe Biden has pushed out there. And this was let's say a big one, because it was directly connected to the intel agencies, to the Russia hoax, to Hunter Biden's laptop, et cetera, et cetera. Let's jump back about 4.5 years ago, debate time, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. And here's Joe Biden saying how Hunter's laptop is a Russian plant. And he cites those 51 national intelligence folks. And every word he says here has now been proven to be, yes, a lie.
There are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And that's exactly what.
Is this where you're going? This is where he's going. The laptop is Russia,
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
You have to be kidding. Here we go again with.
Okay, so the reason I wanted to start there before we get into Kash Patel is you can see how it all operates, right? A fake story. 51 intelligence officials say that Hunter Biden's laptop's fake. Then Twitter, which at the time, pre-Elon, was working with the government to make sure people couldn't put out the links to the New York Post story, exposing that it actually was real. Again, I would only say go back to my videos 5 years ago, and for some reason I was like, oh, I kind of think it's real. We'll wait and see. Why didn't I get duped again? Why didn't you get duped again? But now let's directly connect this to what's going on with the FBI. How do you stop this? How do you stop endless lies, the launder of lies, where a politician makes plants a story, makes something up, a Democrat always says something, media runs cover, et cetera, et cetera. How do you do it? Well, you're going to have to clean up the agencies, and that's what it appears Donald Trump is doing right now. We've got this from Colin Rugg. Breaking: Donald Trump nominates Kash Patel to be the next director of the FBI. And that guy's got the crazy eyes to go in there and say, I'm going to F some stuff up. Let me read you at least a portion of Donald Trump's statement on this. I thought it was quite good. I am proud to announce that Kash Patel will serve as the next director of the FBI. Kash is a brilliant lawyer, investigator, and America First fighter who has spent his career exposing corruption, defending justice, and protecting the American people. He played a pivotal role in uncovering the Russia hoax, standing as an advocate for truth, accountability, and the Constitution. Kash did an incredible job during my first term, where he served as Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, Deputy Director of National Intelligence, and Senior Director for Counterterrorism at the NSC. Kash has also tried over 60 jury trials. The FBI will end the growing crime epidemic in America, dismantle the migrant criminal gangs, and stop the evil scourge of human and drug trafficking across the border. Kash will work under our great Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to bring back fidelity, bravery, and integrity to the FBI. Okay, so now I want to show you this is about a minute long. It's a compilation of Kash Patel doing podcasts over the last year or two. And I just want you, as you watch this, to note the difference in the way he speaks, the sort of clarity and off-the-cuffness and everything else, versus sort of the stodgy, stiff, and actually the people on the Democrat side don't even go on podcasts, but sort of like the fake version of what they tell you about everything. And listen to a guy who's just kind of telling you how he sees the world. Take a look.
Anyway, the other thing that I put in the book that I recommended the boss to do hits on this. We need a 24/7 declassification office.
Yes.
Rolling papers out 24/7. And not just like JFK and not just 9/11. You're talking to the guy that's read the whole 9/11 report and those 7 pages that people talk about. But I believe, as like the guy who's an intel guy who believes wholeheartedly in the classified system of information, I believe that it has been over-abused by these corrupt officials in government to hide the truth and enact more corrupt activities. So
I'm not saying it's not there. Who are you going to get that?
For instance, who is currently holding, this is way off the topic, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book.
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
that's under direct control of the director of the FBI. Just like the manifesto from the Nashville school shooting of the Catholic school. We still haven't seen that, right?
The biggest problem the FBI has come out of its intel shops. I'd break that component out of it. I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state. And I'd take the 7,000 employees that work in that building and send them across America to chase down criminals. Go be cops. You're cops. Go be cops. Go chase down murderers and drug dealers and violent offenders. What do you need 7,000 people there for? Same thing with DOJ. What are all these people doing here? Looking for their next government promotion, looking for their next fancy government title, looking for their parachute out of government. So while you're bringing in the right people, you also have to shrink government.
All right, so the reason I wanted to show you that compilation is here's a guy who clearly can go on podcasts and speak off the cuff. He has information, right, via his previous gigs. And he's basically saying, man, this whole thing is so deeply corrupt. There was a line in there that I particularly liked, which is he says he believes in classification. It's just that it's been abused. So you might make an argument. I think you can make a legit argument. The government has to have some secrets. It has to be able to have, a spy somewhere across the world. And there is some reason for some level of classification and secrecy. I think most thoughtful, mature people would view that. But what he's saying is this thing has become abused. Why is it the Epstein list? Why is it that Jeffrey Epstein dies in jail and the cameras went out and all that kind of thing? And then Giselle Maxwell, she's still in jail, right? She's currently still in jail. So they're the ones, they were the pimps in this thing, but all of the people who were banging all of the underage kids, or God knows what else was going on there, why did no one go after any of them? And why would the FBI be hiding that? Unless there's something really weird, particularly with the Democrat Party and all the celebs. Like that kind of feels right. So you have a guy coming in saying there's way too many people working here. We don't know why they're working here. Why do we have 7,000 people in this building? What are they doing? They're all looking for a government promotion. And you can actually see now how this is connected to the Doge effort that Elon and Vivek are going to do, because they're going to be slashing budgets and they're going to look at the FBI and be like, we don't need 7,000 people here. Let's get these people out of DC. Oh, you guys actually were trained as police officers. There is some work to be done, say in blue cities. Let's get you back out across the country instead of DC, and let's open up the books to whatever extent the books can be opened. Why is it that we can't know what really happened with JFK? There's stuff there. So it seems to me, and Charlie Kirk laid out a tweet here that I thought captured it quite well. Kash Patel becoming FBI director is proof of the people are back in charge of their government. That's really what it feels like to me. Like they're going to say all sorts of awful things about him, and we'll get to some of those things in a second. But like all the guy's basically saying is, hey, how about we live in a slightly more transparent society that's more in line with what the founders intended than this insane thing we've been part of now? And if you'd like a little evidence of the insanity, I believe we have some pictures here of former FBI Director James Comey. And I don't think he's really hiding what he thinks about things. Of course, there he is in a Biden-Harris shirt. I thought that's supposed to be a nonpartisan position. He wants to elect more women. Frankly, I don't care what your genitals are. It's about your ideas. Then he's got the LGBTQ thing. Well, I guess he can jump. So that's nice. He's got full range of motion in his arms and his hips. That's pretty good. Guys, let's talk about Rumble Premium, and then we'll have more on the mainstream media, the FBI, the NIH, tariffs, and a whole bunch more. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built the platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions around COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Of course, Rumble did not. They held the line. They're attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They're attacked in corporate media. They're attacked by governments like France. They're attacked by brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove free speech while Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers alone. They don't get much of it. So watching our show is the number one way we can ask for support from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with promo code Rubin when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium/Rubin and use code Rubin. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we're just happy if you watch us right here on Rumble. All right, so you guys know the script pretty well, and it is all a script. So what happens now to Kash Patel? Here's a guy who comes from outside of the system saying, I am here to reform the system. I want less things to be classified. I want to open up the books a little bit more. I'd like to cut the budget. I want to get less power in DC itself, centralized power. I want to send it back to the states, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you think the system is going to do to him? Well, let's show the people a video of the system.
To me, Kash Patel, and I don't say this lightly, is the most dangerous nominee that we've seen yet to our democracy. I mean, you might think that having Pete Hegseth running the military is a greater level of danger because of his lack of experience, or Tulsi Gabbard at intelligence. But just as far as the threats to democracy that we were warning about before the election.
Kash Patel's only qualification is because he agrees with Donald Trump that the Department of Justice should serve to punish, lock up, and intimidate Donald Trump's political opponents.
Andrew, I just want to start first with you and just get your reaction to this news tonight.
Yeah, well, it's a terrible development for the men and women of the FBI, and also for the nation that depends on a highly functioning, professional, independent Federal Bureau of Investigation. The fact that Kash Patel is profoundly unqualified for this job is not even like a matter for debate.
Remember a couple of weeks ago, we showed you that AI video where if you just replace the word democracy with all of these people, if you just put in bureaucracy instead, you'll have a much better understanding of what's going on here, that they say they're defending democracy, but they're actually defending bureaucracy. What they're all worried about there is that it's just going to be a little more transparent. And they're in the business of making sure that power is centralized, and they got it and you don't. But now I want to jump over. There's going to be plenty more on Kash. That one's really going to be a fight, clearly, because he will basically have the keys to the lockbox with all the secrets as FBI director. So that one is going to be a massive, massive fight over the next couple months. But I want to jump over to the director of the NIH. Donald Trump has selected Jay Bhattacharya. Jay Bhattacharya has been on this show at least a dozen times. We've become good friends. He is a great guy. At the beginning of COVID, when I was trying to, and you can find my first interview with him, which was probably, my guess is it was probably April of 2020, early on COVID, when I started just after 2 weeks of Stop the Spread to be like, something's really wrong here. I was like, who can I put on that's not going to be hysterical? Because it was very easy to put on hysterical people. And I put on a couple hysterical people at the beginning, and I was probably a little hysterical, and we all were. But when it started becoming weird to me, I was like, who is calm and thoughtful and decent on this? Well, I found Stanford professor and scientist Jay Bhattacharya. And he's subsequently been on a million times, as I said. But this is a guy who basically said, hey, the scientists failed us. There was no science backing lockdowns, masks, all of these things. He was very early in on it. And frankly, I can't think of anyone on earth who would be better to reform NIH than him. Well, let's jump over to Nicole Wallace over at the televised mental institution known as MSNBC, because they're freaking out that a guy who, I don't know, is a little skeptical, who maybe is a little more thoughtful, who isn't a total machine hack, might be in charge of the NIH. And man, if you think if Kash has the key to the lockbox of the secrets, I mean, if they start digging around what the high hell happened during COVID over at the NIH, that could be bad for them too. So here's the machine running cover.
Hi there, everyone. It's 4 o'clock in New York. The country may be about to participate in a great big MAGA science experiment. Donald Trump rounding out his picks to lead the federal government's top public health agencies last night, choosing Dr. Jay Bhattacharya to lead the National Institutes of Health, the nation's leading medical research agency, an institution that most of the time works quietly behind the scenes, but is an incredibly important part of our federal government. NBC News reports this, quote, Bhattacharya gained national attention in October of 2020 when he co-wrote the Great Barrington Declaration, an open letter calling on public health officials to roll back COVID lockdowns. The proposal, released before vaccines became available, advocated for a concept called herd immunity, which refers to a level at which a large enough share of a population has been exposed to an infectious disease that it is unlikely to keep spreading. The idea of herd immunity was met with furious pushback by medical experts.
I really can't believe these people. I do this for a living, and I can't believe these people either. Yes, herd immunity It was a thing before COVID, then suddenly during COVID, we weren't allowed to talk about it, and it is a thing now, right? We all know this. Everyone knows this. Like, this wasn't even, you didn't have to be a scientist to figure that out. Oh my God, Jay Bhattacharya was against lockdowns. He was for herd immunity. He started realizing that when you're walking into a restaurant and you're standing, that you have to wear a mask, but somehow COVID, when you're sitting, doesn't get you. This freaking guy. I want to throw back to, this is from about 10 months ago or so, the Real Clear Politics Gala Awards in West Palm Beach. I was the host, and I will be doing the award show again, the Samizdat Prize. It's a free speech award that they do annually. I'll be doing it again, I think, in January or February. But I want to throw back to this moment when I was talking to Jay on stage. He was one of the recipients of the award, about how he somehow was a sober thinker during a crazy time.
But you were clear-minded on COVID really from the beginning. I went back and I watched our first episode. You've been on my show many times now, and you were not as alarmist as everyone. You were not as kind of crazy as everyone. And I wonder, how did that feel for you at the beginning? Now you've sort of, time has vindicated you, but how did it feel at the beginning?
I mean, I thought the world had gone crazy. I mean, I understood why a lot of people were scared, right? There's a new disease floating around. But I'm an epidemiologist. I do health policy. I saw many of the things that Carl said. I saw that because I'd studied them before. I mean, it was just a very strange place that I happened to be at the right place at the right time. So I did what I had always done, which is I wrote scientific papers. What stunned me was the reaction to those papers by my colleagues, by my university.
Okay, if you haven't seen the full 2-hour program, we'll put a link to that below, but you can find it on YouTube or on Rumble. But the point of showing you that was the guy, this is a soft-spoken, humble guy. I've been with him at events where people come up to him and they thank him for everything he did and all those things. This guy does not want fame or power or anything else. If anything, when there were rumors last week that Trump might tap him, I personally was thinking, he may not want to do it because I don't see this guy as someone that really wants to be seen. He's a scientist. Like, he's a scientist for the right reasons. Anyway, you can clearly see what's going on here. When it comes to Kash Patel, they're going to be like, oh my God, we're going to know too much. It'll be worded a little differently, but people will know about what we've been doing, and that's not good. And then when it's Jay Bhattacharya, oh my God, he won't take the next COVID seriously. And of course, what else is happening? Well, Donald Trump has been threatening some other countries with tariffs. And we can all have a debate about tariffs and what they do. And obviously a tariff in essence is if China creates a whole bunch of products and they bring them over here and then those things are too cheap because they can make them cheaper, then it basically harms American workers because we can't build anything anymore because everyone will buy the Chinese stuff, right? So if you have a tariff, and this is for a bigger conversation with an economist, but in essence, the idea of a tariff and what Trump's pushing is if you have a tariff on it, then that way the Chinese or whoever it is can't just endlessly send stuff to our shores that we can't compete with, right? Because we have a different standard of living, our economy is different. The Chinese don't necessarily treat all of the people who are making your iPhones the best possible way, or your Nike sneakers, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a debate to be had around how tariffs work and if they work and everything else. But because Donald Trump is pushing tariffs, oh, and I should mention that, one of the things that they do that, was it Trump that said it last week, that, there's 100% tariffs on American cars going to Japan, meaning if the car costs $50,000, it costs $100,000. It's 100% tariff on it. Now, the problem is, no one's in Japan in your right mind is ever going to buy a GMC or a Ford, right? Because they're going to be like, oh, it's double the cost of what it should be. And yet we don't have any tariffs when Japan tries to build cars here and sell cars here. So Trump is trying to even this thing out. Again, we can argue whether it will work or not, but they're going to have to freak you the F out about it. Here's NBC's Chuck Todd freaking out about tariffs and something that Connor loves particularly.
Part of government, if we're not careful here and if it's not abused, and I think that is certainly a concern when you talk to the more libertarian-minded economics folks, including the folks at the Cato Institute. This is another reason why tariffs potentially are so damaging to the country, because it's so easily corruptible. It becomes part of this back and forth deal making. And by the way, just to simplify this, we're talking about tariffs, but let me make this pretty simple. If this slaps on, it's a guacamole tax. We get most avocados in this country come from Mexico. If you enjoy guacamole, be prepared to pay a higher tax for it if these tariffs go through.
No, I mean, guacamole is one thing, and you're absolutely right. I mean, not only most of the avocados come from Mexico, but the best one.
All right, first off, I want to be clear about something. If there is an increase in the price of avocados, thus guacamole, Connor, I just want to be very clear. You will still eat guacamole whenever you want it. I will always reward you with guacamole. I don't care about the price. I have an avocado tree here, by the way, so it's not going to be a problem. The low-level analysis by Chuck Todd there is just so thin. It's not just what Donald Trump is doing, and we'll have a clip in a moment, Kevin O'Leary laying this out. It's not just, oh, we're going to slap tariffs on you, thus guacamole or avocados are going to cost more because, let's say it costs, I don't know, $5 to get a bushel of avocados in from China. Now we have a tax on it, it's going to cost more, and that cost will be spent out of you. The idea is you put tariffs on it, so then there's a negotiation process between the American government and the Mexican government about imports and exports. The hope is that it will lower prices altogether. Again, it will be seen, but the point is they're just going to freak you out about it. Here's Kevin O'Leary, you know, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, talking about the tariff situation. And listen to just how clearly he lays this out versus the other people on CNN who are not as good at their jobs.
I would like to go to DEFCON 1 with China, tariffs 400%, I brought it up, bring the Supreme Leader to Washington, or crush his economy until he has riots in the street for
Again,
food.
we've had strategies to deal with China.
No, we haven't.
Oh, absolutely,
Not
we have.
one administration since '99 has dealt with
I
them.
thought Trump was going to be tough on China. He had 4 years to do
He's going to
that.
get
I was
tougher
going to say
on
the
China. This
TPP.
is time to really put
So
the
is
screws to them.
35% tariff enough for China then? Because he says it's going to be 10% higher than Mexico and Canada.
No, it's not.
They just don't understand anything. What Mr. Wonderful is saying there is it's not that that necessarily will be the policy that you're going to have a 400% tariff on everything China brings over here. Of course, that's not going to happen. But what you do is you start threatening them a little bit. Instead of China just running rimshot over us and selling us all their cheap crap that then American factories can't compete with, you threaten a tariff. We're going to have a 400% tariff. And then they're suddenly like, oh, well, I guess that means we won't be able to sell anything in America, and they still do want to sell us their shit, right? They want to sell you all that stuff you're buying on Amazon, so then they start lowering the prices. It's a negotiation, but these people these analysts, they've never done anything. They've never built anything, created anything, sold anything other than lies, which come on the cheap, so here we are. Got a bit more from Donald Trump on how he is going to rejigger the world economy. The idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. We require a commitment from these countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor back any other currency to replace the mighty US dollar, or they will face 100% tariffs and should expect to say goodbye to selling into the wonderful US economy. They can go find another sucker. There is no chance that the BRICS will replace the US dollar in international trade, and any country that tries it should wave goodbye to America. Again, guys, this is called negotiating. It's almost, did Donald Trump ever write a book about negotiating? Wasn't there a book? I think there was a book. You might want to pick it up if you're a CNN analyst. The idea now is the BRICS countries, which largely are trying to replace the dollar, suddenly will be like, oh my God, they're going to put such big tariffs on us, we're not going to be able to sell any shit in America. And people want the American market, so he's negotiating. We have to speak slowly, not for you guys, but for, you know, the CNN watchers. Guys, let's talk about TWC, and then we'll have more on tariffs on the other side.
Grandfathers, husbands, dads, I'm talking to you in moments of emergency. You don't have time to hesitate. Whether you're deep in the wild hunting, combating a natural disaster, or camping off-grid, you need to be prepared for anything life throws your way. The Wellness Company's Field Emergency Kit is the most robust personal urgent care at home, giving you the edge when seconds count. Packed in an IP67 military-grade, waterproof, and dustproof case, this kit isn't just built tough, it's built to save lives. Inside, you'll find life-saving antibiotics, antivirals, anti-parasitic, non-addictive pain relief, and even a generic EpiPen. With over 60 conditions covered, this kit stands ready when medical help is miles away or simply not an option. Each kit includes an 85-page medical guide written by the Wellness Company's medical board, guiding you step by step to handle emergencies with confidence. Designed for adventurers, survivalists, and anyone who refuses to leave their safety to chance, gear up with the Field Emergency Kit today.
because when the unexpected happens, you won't just survive, you'll conquer the unexpected. This is the perfect holiday gift for the man of the house. Order directly now or purchase a digital gift card. This is a Rumble exclusive offer. Quantities are limited. Shop now and get $200 off today. Head to twc.health/Rubin and use code RumbleSale for $200 off plus free shipping. USA residents only.
All right, I feel like I owe you guys a little explanation of what you just listened to there. I didn't have a stroke. That was AI. That was AI Dave Rubin. Basically what happened was we had to run that ad last week before the holiday and obviously supposed to run it today. And our schedule was nuts with pre-tapes and everyone going away and going home and everything else, that we did an AI version of it. And I guess AI makes me sound kind of depressive and a little weird, but that is not an indicator of the fine work that the people of TWC are doing. Man, they're going to replace all of us. Remember we showed you the video, what was it, a week or so ago, of Ben Affleck being like, they're going to replace the editors and they're going to replace the key grips and they're going to replace the gaffers, but they'll never replace the creators and the talkers and blah, blah, blah. It's like, all of our days are numbered, people. Anyway, let's jump back over to this tariff situation. And as I said earlier, that the world, even though Donald Trump is not president yet, is reordering itself. Check this out from the Daily Wire. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau reportedly called President-elect Donald Trump on Monday night, just hours after Trump threatened to enact tariffs against Canada for border security issues. Shortly after Trump's post, Trudeau contacted Trump and the two leaders spoke by phone, said Bloomberg News reporter Brian Platt. According to a source, they talked border security and it was a constructive call, he said. Trudeau pointed out that the issues at the Canadian border are minuscule compared to the US-Mexico border. So do you get what just happened here? Trump basically says, if you guys up north don't start fixing yourselves, we're going to slap some tariffs on you too. And then what happens? Oh, magically, total coincidence, I'm sure. Look who shows up at Mar-a-Lago. Yes, that is Justin Trudeau, who is, if Gavin Newsom is the devil incarnate, he is the devil incarnate, I guess, mini, sitting right next to Donald Trump. And you know that was a giant suck-up meal. Like this was this guy begging for mercy, and he's only got about 10 months left. Anyway, if you zoom in on that photo, you might see right behind Donald Trump's left shoulder there is a kid who is doing a little photo bomb. You got to enjoy that guy. And we have a bit more about what happened over there from the Daily Wire. President-elect Donald Trump said on Saturday that Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau committed to working with the U.S. on issues that Trump raised earlier in the week. I'm shocked. Trump said that his meeting with Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago was very productive as the two leaders discussed many important topics that will require both countries to work together to address, like the fentanyl and drug crisis that has decimated so many lives as a result of illegal immigration, fair trade deals that do not jeopardize American workers, and the massive trade deficit the U.S. has with Canada. I made it very clear that the United States will no longer sit idly by as our citizens become victims of this scourge of drug epidemic caused mainly by the drug cartels and fentanyl pouring in from China, Trump continued. Too much death and hardship. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has made a commitment to work with us to end this devastation of U.S. families. So you get it, guys? All Trump did was basically say, we're going to slap some tariffs on you if you don't deal with the drug situation, the immigration situation, the trade deficit situation, right? Because we can't produce things that can compete because other countries put tariffs on us and we don't put tariffs on them. And then suddenly Trudeau's showing up to Mar-a-Lago. Trudeau, two-spirit, whatever, Justin Trudeau with his socks is showing up to kiss the ring at Mar-a-Lago. A bit more from Leading Report. Breaking, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's government will set up a border enforcement amid tariff proposals from President-elect Trump, according to a top Canadian official. Hot damn. So Donald Trump does a negotiating ploy, and then next thing you know, Canada is behaving accordingly. I am completely shocked, but it's not just Canada to the north, it's also Mexico to the south. Check this out from Donald Trump. Just had a wonderful conversation with the new president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo. She has agreed to stop migration through Mexico and into the United States, effectively closing our southern border. We also talked about what can be done to stop the massive drug inflow into the U.S. and also U.S. consumption of these drugs. It was a very productive conversation. Mexico will stop people from going to our southern border effective immediately. This will go a long way towards stopping the illegal invasion of the United States. Thank you. Do you realize what is going on here? The man is not president yet, and somehow he already
via negotiation, via conversation, via the levers that he has, like tariffs. He has already not enabled Mexico, he has conditioned Mexico to do what it would not do under the man with dementia and the diversity hire who ran for president once she cooed him. And that is pretty freaking spectacular. Now, of course, there's going to be way, way more stuff that has to be dealt with because it's not just the border and it's not just the economy. What we're also going to have to deal with is the attacks on regular citizens. So I want to jump over to Marc Andreessen. Marc Andreessen is one of the kind of legendary billionaire tech founders over the last decade or so. And he was on Joe Rogan's show a couple days ago talking about debanking. This is one of the topics that we've talked a bit about, I would say, over the years here, because I've known some people personally that have been debanked, like David Horowitz and some others. But this was one of the ways that the system could control free speech. Oh, you're a little too much in line with Trump. You were there on January 6th, this, that, the other thing. You might just show up to Chase one day and your account is not going to be there, or Bank of America, which has been much more nefarious in its actions there. Anyway, here is Andreessen on Rogan talking about how the US government forces banks to debank right-wing people.
Here's a great thing. Under current banking regulations, after all the reforms of the last 20 years, there's now a category called a politically exposed person, PEP. And if you are a PEP, you are required by financial regulators to kick them off of your to kick them out of your bank. You're not allowed to have them.
What if you're politically on the left?
Well, that's fine.
No,
because they're not politically exposed.
So no one on the left gets debanked?
I have not heard of a single instance of anybody on the left getting debanked.
Could you tell me what the person that you know did, what they said that got them debanked?
Oh, well, I mean, David Horowitz is a right wing. He's pro-Trump. I mean, he said all kinds of things. He's been very anti-Islamic terrorism. He's been very worried about migration, all these things.
And they debanked him for that.
Yeah, they debanked him. So you get kicked out of your bank account. You get kicked out of you can't do credit card transactions. By the way, you can't.
How is that legal?
Well, exactly. So this is the thing, and then you go into this thing of like, well, there's no. This is where the government and the companies get intertwined. Back to your fascism point, which is there's a constitutional amendment that says the government can't restrict your speech, but there's no constitutional amendment that says the government can't debank you, right? And so if they can't do the one thing, then they do the other thing, and then they don't have to debank you. They just have to put pressure on the private company banks to do it, and then the private company banks do it because they're expected to. But the government gets to say we didn't do it. It was the private company that did it, and of course J.P. Morgan can decide who they want to have as customers, of course, right? Because they're a private company, and so it's this sleight of hand that happens. So it's basically a privatized sanctions regime that lets bureaucrats do to American citizens the same thing that we do to Iran. As marijuana started to become legal, as prostitution started to become legal, and then guns, which there's always a fight about. Under the Obama administration, they started to debank legal marijuana businesses, escort businesses, and then gun shops, just like your gun manufacturers, and just like you're done, you're out of the banking system. And so if you're running a medical marijuana dispensary in 2012, like guess what? You're doing your business all in cash because you literally can't get a bank account. You can't get a Visa terminal. You can't process transactions. You can't do payroll. You can't do direct deposit. You can't get insurance. Like none of that stuff is, you've been sanctioned, right? None of that stuff is available. And then this administration extended that concept to apply it to tech founders, crypto founders, and then just generally political opponents. So that's been like super pernicious.
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, 100%. And this is called, so it's Operation Choke Point 1.0 was 15 years ago against the pot and the guns. Choke Point 2.0 is primarily against their political enemies and then to their disfavored tech startups. And it's hit the tech world like we've had like 30 founders debanked in the last 4 years.
Really?
Yeah. It's been a big recurring pattern.
30.
This is one of the reasons why we ended up supporting Trump. It's like we can't live in this world. We can't live in a world where somebody starts a company that's a completely legal thing and then they literally like get sanctioned.
All right, so everything Andreessen said there is true. People have been trying to fact check him on Twitter because it sounds so crazy. It's also interesting to me that Rogan seems to have had no idea that any of this was going on. I mean, we know it was going on. Actually, David Horowitz Freedom Center, which was his nonprofit, I used to do events for them. And then a couple of years ago, he asked me to do the event. And I was like, all right, I'll even waive, because I like him. I really like him. He was one of the original Why I Left the Left guys. He's been on the show a couple of times. And I was like, I won't even take a speaking fee, just pay for me to fly out there. Is when I lived in LA and I think they were doing it in West Palm. I was like, just pay for me to fly out there. He's like, we can't, because we can't even get money into our accounts anymore. And then I was going to do it anyway, and then I just couldn't because of a schedule conflict. But the point is, this has been going on for quite some time. I really like the phrase that Andreessen said there, which is privatized economic sanctions. So the government is like, oh, we can't take out these people, but we can basically just push them out of society. They have political views we don't like. Well, they do have the First Amendment, and we'll have to work around that eventually. But we can just make sure that they can't do business. And most people like doing business. Most people like owning a home and owning a car and getting a loan. So we'll just push them out of the system altogether. Now, ironically, this has also driven the rise of crypto, obviously, because it's outside of the system. So there's always a better mousetrap to be had. But I thought that was good. And by the way, didn't it all sound exactly like the arguments that have been made over the last couple of years around big tech? That the government knew during COVID it couldn't come in and basically arrest you for being anti-lockdown or anti-vax or whatever. But what could they do? Oh, they could put certain pressures on big tech companies like the old regime at Twitter, et cetera, to make sure that if you tweeted something out that was counter to the narrative, that you would be deboosted, not debanked, but deboosted, et cetera, et cetera. Andreessen continued, because this was catching fire on Twitter, and he wrote this: the president's wife and son were debanked. And here he has, this is a highlighted clip from Melania Trump's book that came out a couple of weeks ago, where she wrote, "I was shocked and dismayed to learn that my longtime bank decided to terminate my account and deny my son the opportunity to open a new one." So this sort of thing has been happening for quite some time. And again, sort of to Rogan's surprise, it seemingly only is happening to people on the right. And I don't know why that would be surprising to you. But check this out from John Arnold. The root cause of debanking is regulators have essentially outsourced the policing of money laundering to financial firms, with the penalty for being too lax being 9 or 10 figure fines. Banks are highly disincentivized from banking anyone questionable, ensnaring even legit accounts. So they don't stop your speech or your ability to do commerce directly from the government. They're just putting pressure on the giant banks to kick you out of the system. We have a bit more on this. The US government expects banks to check for criminals, stop them from opening bank accounts and sending or receiving money, and report their crimes to the government. If a bank does not do this, it will get in trouble. The trouble will consist of a large fine, a guilty plea to federal crimes, and Justice Department officials giving a press conference in which they say Bank X became involved in terrorism and drug trafficking. These consequences seem bad. Now look, I would give the devil his due here. Banks have some responsibility. If someone is doing a whole bunch of illegal stuff, if there is money laundering that the bank knows about, they are in no, they should report that to the government, and they have no responsibility to keep that person as part of their business, right? But clearly this has become political. That's the problem. And Vivek Ramaswamy, who is going to head up Doge with Elon, he wrote this. Congress delegated its lawmaking authority to unelected bureaucrats in 3-letter agencies, who in turn outsource their dirty work to quote-unquote private companies with a mix of threats and rewards. The trend is now ubiquitous, from tech censorship to debanking. This is a soft form of fascism. And that's the line that I like there, because, you know, the left will always, up until the election, what were we? We were all fascists, and Donald Trump is a fascist and everything else. But they are the ones who have been acting in a fascistic manner. What is fascism? It is the collusion between the government and the private sector against you, the individual. And that's exactly what they have done in this case. And Vivek is right. It was big tech, it was banks. God only knows what else it was. Well, it was certainly in our education system and a whole bunch more. So where are we at on this December 2nd, 2024, with the current administration that has, 48 some odd days left till they're gone? A little bit more than that, probably. Well, I think where we're at is that we are on the precipice of great change. I think we can clean all of this stuff up. As I said, from the moment Trump got elected that very night, we can have an 80s style revolution and revival in this country that will be unrelentingly positive and wonderful, and release all of the American ingenuity and creativity and everything. It can all happen, but we're not there yet. We're just not there yet. So I want to jump back to Andreessen, because here he explains, and again, this guy's a billionaire, explains why certain wealthy people were voting for Kamala.
What do you think the motivation of all these wealthy people to vote for Kamala Harris was?
Because they feel great. because they're saving the world.
That's what it is.
It's amazing to be in charge and control society and decide how everything works and decide who's good and who's bad. And like, you're elite. You get to be the elite. You get to make the elite decisions.
And if you want to be in that group, you have to.
You got to do this, and you feel good about yourself because you feel like what you're doing is on behalf of your. You feel like what you're doing is on behalf of your clientele and your
It's
class.
reinforced by the echo chamber you live in.
Yeah, and it's why if you read the media, New York Times, it's either New York Times only has 2 articles anymore. It's either how evil are Republicans or how innocent and helpless are poor aggrieved minorities or identity groups. Right, and so the oppositional force, but we're the party of good with a capital G because we're taking care of all these poor, marginalized people. And so it's a very compelling. You feel great about yourself, right? It's just absolutely amazing. And then, by the way, it just so happens that the economy is wired up in a way where you're getting paid a ton of money for not working very hard, and it's all great. And then you're completely isolated away from the lived experience of just normal people, which is the state that I found myself in, where it would never even occur to you to talk to a garbage man or to somebody running a restaurant or whatever, because it's just like you're not affected by the rising crime rates because you live in a safe neighborhood, and you've got you're against the wall on the border, but you got a wall around your house, right, and so you're in this bubble, and then you only ever talk to people who agree with you, and then the media is constantly reinforcing it, and then you get ostracized if you disagree.
All right, so you guys all get that. You get it sort of at the politician level. It's like the Democrats, like Nancy Pelosi, they don't want a border wall, but yet she has huge walls at her house and security and everything else, and they can afford to do it a certain way, right? It's why they'll always be like, police are bad, and then you go to a community that is overrun with crime, and they're like, can we have more police here, please? That would be nice. But this is what the left has done with everything. They have created now an alliance where Marc Andreessen, I knew him, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago. The guy was not outspoken at all, had his own private beliefs, did not really share them, but now more and more people are becoming emboldened to stand up against this thing. And I would say that deeply is connected to what has been happening online, that a whole bunch of us have just been willing to talk to each other. And that's been in stark contrast with a mainstream media and elite class that basically were just saying we're all evil for doing that. Coleman Hughes, who's been on the show, is a CNN contributor now. And here he is talking about how the left's hysteria is what drove all the normies away.
I've been on Rogan's show 3 times. I've probably heard over 100 hours of it in the past decade. A decade ago, Joe Rogan was a Bernie Sanders supporter who would get emotional talking about how important it is to legalize marijuana, who would get emotional talking about how important it is to get Christianity out of politics, in particular on the abortion issue, who had a host of left-wing opinions, including about healthcare. And liberals drove him away by calling him a racist, unearthing jokes he made, calling him a misogynist, really with no evidence.
When you make racist
calling him
jokes
a transphobe,
about people of color,
calling him a
people
lot of
calling you
comedians
racist is likely
make
going to
jokes
happen.
all the time. Calling him transphobic because he didn't like
He
seeing
also didn't
Fallon
love the
Fox
vaccine thing, right?
beating up.
To our point earlier.
That also used to be a left-wing opinion, to be against vaccines like 20 years ago. Again, so he actually hasn't shapeshifted very much, to your point. The Democratic Party has shapeshifted and driven him away and alienated his followers.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I know that that's right for many of you watching this right now. It's not that your opinions have so wildly shifted. All of you that are watching this right now that are new or first-time Trump voters right now, is it that your opinions so shifted, you've become such a crazed right-wing maniac, or is it that they went bananas? The left went completely bananas and they purged out all of the sane people. So in some respect, I don't care what happens to the future of the Democrat Party. You guys, I mean, all the rumors now are that AOC is going to run for president in 28. I don't even want to think about that. But the point is, if you guys want that, if you want that endlessly hysterical, dishonest, whatever juice the machine has left thing, fine. But the rest of us are going to be for America. And we're going to be okay with living with people who are a little different than us. But we're not going to put up with this bullshit and the lies and the destruction of our country anymore. We're just not going to do it. And so much of that was brought to us by a dishonest mainstream media. And here's Dana White from the UFC on that.
Just in general, like, why do you think your fighters kind of relate well to Trump? Because, like, back to back, it was Bo, then Chandler, then John. Like, why do you think they relate so well to the president?
Well, if you saw the election, the entire country relates with Trump right now. Won all the swing states. The only states she won were the ones that you didn't need ID to vote in. It would have been interesting if you needed ID, how that would have played out too. I think that the whole country It feels like somebody hit the reset button. Everything feels, and however this election went, everybody was hoping it was a blowout either way, so there would be no more bull. And what I think everybody's tired of the bullshit, man. We're all tired. We all just want to live our lives and run our businesses and raise our families and do all that shit. And hopefully this stuff will all simmer down in the next 4 years. So I've had this philosophy for the last 5 years that traditional media is dead and it doesn't hold the influence that it used to hold. The two most hated people in this world right now are the media and the politicians. Nobody trusts them and nobody believes them. And the true influence right now is with these kids that are on the internet, and they're called influencers.
All right, so I don't know if I'm an influencer. I'm certainly not a kid, but all of us that are just doing this thing a little bit differently as the machine goes apoplectic, as it doubles down, as many of the people who pushed all of the lies and all of the nonsense and all of the hysteria and anger, as they try to repaint themselves as the good guys, they had nothing to do with any of the COVID stuff or calling everyone fascist Nazis or any of that stuff. They'll all continue doing all of that. And we just need to be a little bit better than them, a little bit more aware, and we need to build new things, and the future will be bright. That is our Monday post-Thanksgiving program. Guys, we've got some new merch over at the DaveRubin.store website on the internet, and we have a post-game show coming in 30 seconds at RubinReport.locals.com. Goodbye.